Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 36 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasenowski, and I am the writer of Janner Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Markham, scripter of the Rest Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We've got some wonderful pulls on this week's episode. We've got The Boy Wonder, number 4, Ain't No Grave, number 4, Uncanny X-Men, number 1, and Arkham Horror, The Terror at the End of Time, number 1.
Also have a bonus episode that just went up this past Saturday. It is once again the Strange Saturday Super Show, the show that we do once a month, covering the weirdest comics have to offer. This month we talked about Happy. You can check that out if you want. There'll be a link to it in the description of this episode. If you enjoyed that, any of the polls on this episode, or anything else you've seen from us, you can follow the pod on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. And you can find me on all the same sites at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all socials at Katie Markham Pro.
And now, let's move on to the news. So for the news this week, I want to talk about another odd thing Marvel's doing. We talked about their Red Band comic books, and I think we had a lot of fun talking about that. So I want to talk about something else Marvel has started doing, I want to say over the past couple weeks in terms of books that have been coming out. I don't know if you've heard about this, but they are doing what they are calling bonus scenes in some of their comic books, which are a full page of the comic is a QR code that you scan to then get a page on your phone.
What's funny is one of the books we're reading this week is the Uncanny X-Men number 1.
Yep.
And I got to the end and I was like, what is this ugly ass QR code? I didn't even scan it. I was like, it's probably just like
you didn't finish the comic, Katie.
Evidently not. I'll have to, in between this segment and the polls, I'll be sure to read the bonus page.
So it's a comic book version of Marvel's post-credits scene. And people are big mad about it.
Yeah. No, that's...
Seeing as it is a full page in the comic book dedicated to scanning so you can get a full page of the comic book on your phone. Also, don't know if they fixed this since I last tried it, but it is not formatted for cell phones, so you can't zoom in on your phone. It's kind of a disaster.
Okay. Also, as I love that this is in the news, because again, I just read a book that had it, and there is no indication on the page that it's like...
You're supposed to know, Katie.
I'm assuming it's a tagline from them saying that it's like the post-credit scene.
I don't know if it's from them. I see it here because the line from them is they call it bonus scenes. The article that I just happen to have open about it is comparing it to Marvel's post-credit scenes, which I feel like an easy jump to make.
Yes, yeah, very much so. But it's wild to not have, because like if they announced it and were like, we're putting post-credit scenes in comics, then I would get not having like any sort of indication of it. Because it's like, it's supposed to be like an Easter egg for the super fans.
Yeah.
But like to have just no indication of what the QR code is supposed to do or be, it's just incredibly funny to me that they would do this when we have an exact example of it right now. Okay, yeah, you still cannot zoom in. It's on Marvel.com, and I think it's worth noting, I do have the Marvel Unlimited app on my phone, and it did not go to that instead, so there's no redirect feature on it.
You have to. So I read something on Reddit, people talking about this. If you change it in your phone browser, because you shouldn't have to do this, because it makes no fucking sense. But if you go into your phone browser and click like use desktop version, you will then be able to zoom in on your phone.
Which is even funnier. Which, yes, you can then do it. But that's so funny that it's a QR code. Nobody's going to hold it up to their computer to scan it.
It makes no sense.
That is so hilarious.
But I want to get a couple of the quotes from Marvel editor Tom Brevoort on like the explanation, because a couple of the things said about this are just very funny to me.
Hit me with it.
So the first line, and I think several people at Marvel have said this line, and there've been people who've been kind of continuing this, which is, it was a bonus page to begin with, an extra page. We didn't scale back the contents of, this is talking about X-Men number one,
Yeah.
X-Men 1 in order to do it, because I think it's launching across all the X books is like the soft launch of it, and then we'll see.
Mhm.
Um, so this has been a claim I've also seen a couple of the creators make, that like this was extra. This wouldn't have been in the book. But then also I've heard from people that like characters have been introduced or like plot points have been revealed in these bonus pages. And so no, it's a full
Also,
page in the
they
comic book. It just
dedicated
could
a
have been it.
full page of the book
Yeah. Yeah.
to the QR
Yeah.
code. They could have
Yeah.
just put it in the book.
Yeah. Well, do you want to know why they didn't put the bonus page in the book? Because this makes, I promise you, Katie, this makes perfect sense.
I feel like you're lying to me, but go ahead.
And it gave us a page whose contents we could conceal until the day of release, thus avoiding any early spoilers. Because the easiest place to keep something safe is on the internet. They
Like,
can't scan it. They can't scan it to post it online if it's, already online.
and also, I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like retailers are pretty good about not sending out spoilers,
No, I
right?
think honestly,
Most
most
spoilers
spoilers
come
come from
from
like the preview
creators.
pages that Marvel put out themselves, or
Yeah,
DC put out
that
themselves.
Marvel
Like,
puts out, or like when Greg Capullo left in the shit on his Wolverine pages. Like, I
yeah,
feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
big spoilers don't come from retailers because retailers have
No,
a very vested interest in staying in the good
no.
graces of their publishers.
Absolutely.
And
If anything, they come from like
also,
early reviewers and stuff who get digital copies anyway. Like digital is easier to. There's no paper like you can just post it online. Boom, easy, go. It is easier for something to be leaked if it is digital.
and also, if it's a bonus page that's not supposed to be like necessary for the core issue, then what do you mean spoilers?
Oh yeah, it's absolutely contradictory. It's a bonus page. Doesn't actually, it's just a bonus page. It's just a fun little extra bonus page. But also, this is how we'll conceal our big spoilers. This is how we're gonna keep everybody from finding out about our big spoilers. Like, can you have it both ways? That this is where the big spoilery stuff's gonna happen, and also it's a bonus page. And
Not to be
also,
a stick in the
who
mud,
wants
but
to
no, you
read the
can't.
big spoilery surprises on their phone or on their computer
Right?
when they have the physical book?
Right? Like, I truly. So I feel like we can sort of read between the lines here and say maybe the original idea for this was so we can conceal spoilers. So that, like, it can be a thing that if it goes well, we can kind of put out
No,
across books and, like,
I don't
use
buy
as,
that that
like,
was
a.
the starting point. I
Then
find
what
that
do
that's
you
damage
think the
control.
starting point could
I
possibly
think the
have
starting
been?
point was bonus page, like post credit scene. Like I think that was the starting page of like how do we make something in a comic book feel like a post credit scene? Like how do we do something bonus in a comic book? If we just put another page in and it's 23 instead of 22 pages, nobody's even going to notice. So how do we make it feel like a bonus thing in every book? We'll make them scan a QR code and then they'll get the bonus extra page. Like that's where I think it has to start. The spoiler thing just makes no conceivable sense.
What also gets me is I don't believe they do it. I like don't do a lot of digital comics, especially not for the big two. Like I don't buy single issue digitals. Wasn't it
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
a thing for a
Same.
while that when you bought physicals, you would get copies of digitals? I feel like
I
there was a
think it was
thing
a
for a while.
Marvel thing for a while. I think you're
Yeah.
right. I think that was a Marvel thing. I don't remember DC really doing that a ton outside of like a few special like
Mhm.
things. But I think you're right. I do think Marvel was doing that at one point.
So like if they're trying, if this is theoretically, and I think that might have been years and years ago,
Yeah.
if it isn't still continuing, um, then if they're trying to like encourage people to use their website and stuff, which feels like the only other feasible explanation for why they would do this,
Yeah.
what a weird way to get people to go to your website, and why wouldn't you make it like require a Marvel login or something, or like, you know,
That would be something like here's a bonus
get it
page and
through
make it
the
actually a
app.
bonus page, not like for people who have Marvel Unlimited, you know,
Hmm.
like that would be kind of logical. But here's the other thing, like here's my main thought. Like I would be, I think, somewhat against this regardless because I would never want to have a physical book and then have to read something on my phone
No,
because
yeah,
that just
same.
seems lame. But let's just pretend that that's not a format that I'd be like. I feel like it would make more sense
Hmm.
doing a post credits scene type thing. You're gonna dedicate a page in the book to being a QR code. Make it 2 or 3 pages or something so you can like
Or
justify like it's only 1 page in the book, but here's your bonus scene that'll be a couple pages on the app. So like
or what I think would make even more sense would be make it a little like motion comic, so that you have a reason
that would
for
just
it
be
to be
so expensive
digital.
though. That would just be so expensive, I feel like.
If it's just, you can do very inexpensive motion comics. Like the
And Marvel do very inexpensive motion comics.
Honestly, probably. I'm not saying like a big feature thing. I'm saying like maybe it's even just like the last page of it. Like we have the kids coming out of the woods.
Yeah.
Even if it's just like them fading into the like foreground as if walking out, and you have like horse hoof step effects happening. Like
My
if it
point was
was
less like
anything
can
other,
Marvel physically do it and more like is
can they
Marvel
get
willing
away
to
with
do
it?
something that
Got it.
looks cheap like that and make that like their big thing? It's like, here's this cheap, barely animation. Because I feel like
But
they'd
at
be getting
least then
similar
it
flack
would be
for
something
how crap
that
that.
you could not get in the physical comic.
Yeah.
Like the fact that it's a
No,
static
you're
page,
you're right.
like some sort of
Yeah.
moving semi video
Yeah.
content.
I think the best way for that to work, but I don't think it would be what they were going for, is since they're doing it across like all the X-Men books, make it be one bonus and make it be like a 1 minute
Yeah.
animation that like connects to all the, or like a 30-second animation. Like that connects to all the X-Men books and is like, here's the big villain that's going on in the background or something like plotting. Like here's a
Hmm.
30-second clip. And if you get any of the X-Men books, you get this 30-second clip that you can watch, from the end. But
Alternatively, because we know that the internet is like a collective space, even if you did like you get one character's perspective on it, or like, you know, little 15-second, or how many X-Men books are there? Four?
I
Five?
think it's across like all the X-Men books. Like, you
Yeah,
remember how many
they're
were
like
announced? And they're
launching a
like,
bunch of new ones. Is it like seven?
no, it's like 20K. Like remember we were going through all the solo
Oh
characters. Like
yeah,
it is a
we went over
ton.
them over a long period of time. Um,
Yeah, there are a ton. Like it is a ridiculously high number.
then never mind, because I was gonna say it could be little patches that would then come together to form like a
Yeah, that's
full
why I was
story.
going with the if it's animated, I think it would have to be like one
Mhm.
thing because I just think the budget would get insane. Like for individual
Yeah,
comic books making animated stuff. Like I just don't think the budget's there for that
but
based on
like
how
it's
much comic
still,
books
it continues
sell
to
in
beg the
general.
question of why. And like I am someone
But
who I love
that's a
a
great
good
question.
innovation in the comic space, even if
Yeah.
it's like stuff that doesn't work out or like seems a little hokey. Like I love it. I think it's fun that people are like keeping things fresh. A QR code to a static page does not count. Like that is my line in the
If you
sand.
could literally just put the page on that page instead of the damn QR code, like it
Right?
makes no sense. It's
And
not
here,
logical.
even if like somewhere within the issue there was like, I don't know, a little Easter egg or something that was then like you had to like put in a password to unlock it, even that would be something. But no.
Yeah, like at least like what you're saying there's just get creative with it. Like do something that's more creative of like like maybe there's a hidden message, like maybe there's a theme of like hidden messages or something like in the like there's some sort of hacker character, whatever. I hate hacker characters, but you get the point of like here's this thing that's going on. There's these secret messages and stuff, and then you can play along if you find the QR code, and then like that's creative at least. Like if you
Yeah.
hide it or you do something like that. Like this is just a QR code to a static page. Like get a QR code page.
Which is, I think, the truly egregious part. Because again, my thought was literally, what is this ugly ass QR code? I don't care enough to scan it.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it makes
Absurd.
such little sense.
That is so funny, though. Well,
But
hopefully
I wanted
Marvel
to
has
talk
very
about
much
it.
learned their lesson. My hope is that they don't abandon the QR code thing and they instead say, how can we make this cool and creative? Um, like, I still probably won't scan them very often at
I'd
all.
rather they just abandon it
I think
because
it'd
I
be
don't.
fun if they
Because
figured out something fun to do with it.
here's my final piece on it is I think that it's smart to embrace both the physical and digital sides of comics.
Yes.
But I think it is a mistake to make one reliant on the other, or to
Agreed.
make one touch it. You should be able to read a physical comic book, no matter what happens with the internet, no matter what happens like with Marvel servers or whatever. Like that physical comic book should be
A complete
untainted
item.
by yeah. Like I don't like the idea of it's like when video games became buying discs just to download the game off of servers, and everybody stopped buying discs because why would you
Yeah,
do that? So leave physical comics as physical comics. It's important to the
please.
medium, I feel.
It truly, truly is. And it also, like, it's just lame at the end
It's
of the
lame.
day. It's just lame.
You
And it doesn't
very
seem to have a
eloquently said, my
purpose.
friend.
The only purpose I can imagine, this is my last thought on it, is
Go for it.
okay, I don't have any ad blockers or anything on my phone, so Marvel doesn't like run ads on their website, as I would hope they wouldn't. They're like a major company. Um so like it's not even like they're getting AdSense from people going to their website. It literally feels like it's just boosting website traffic. There's truly no point.
I genuinely think, like weirdly, for maybe like something that I won't like, I don't think this was like a
Money motivated.
motivated by any sort of like online trap. Like I don't think that was the motivate. Like
Yeah.
I think that this was genuinely somebody being like, people are gonna love this. This is gonna get people to buy the books because people are gonna think it's so cool that they get like a post credit scene in a comic book. Everybody loves post credit scenes, despite the fact that I think people have started getting sick of movie post credit scene at this point. Like if you'd done this maybe 6 years ago, you would have
Mhm.
been in the prime heat. But you came a
Well,
little late to
also
the
a
party.
post-credit scene also like is exciting. You know, you're watching it.
Yeah.
You see a duck move around on the screen. That's really the only one that I ever remember is the one from Deadpool and the one from it's one of the Guardians movies or like Infinity
Oh
War or
yeah,
something
yeah, yeah. When it's
with the
Howard
duck.
the Duck at the end. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I remember the Iron Man one because iconic. The first Captain America, like I
Which
feel like
one
the
was
Phase
it?
One MCU ones were really good because they were like the Iron Man one is the why can't I think of his actual character name? Samuel L. Jackson. Why can't I think of Nick
Nick
Fury? It's
Fury?
like Nick Fury sitting there and he's like, I'm gonna tell you about the Avengers Initiative, and like that's
Mm.
the nice
I don't
little
think that I've
cliffhanger. And the
seen.
Cap
Sorry, go ahead.
and then the Cap one's just him waking up in New York after like the plane goes down. Because like both of those were very much like the movie is a complete movie, and then here's this thing that isn't like so huge that it's like overpowering or like,
Mhm.
but like here's the next kind of idea of what might come for this character, and I think
Yeah.
that was cool because it also wasn't relying on other characters. Because I feel like post credit scene now are come in two forms. One, the movie is not complete without it, or two, it is a cameo or a thing for another character. Like I like the idea of no, it's still about this character, but it's just like a
Mhm.
little thing of what's going to
Yeah.
come for this character. But we've gotten so far off track
We
into my
sure have.
thoughts on post credit scenes, so let's
But it's relevant. It's
let's talk
relevant.
about some comic books.
Yes, let's go talk about our physical comic books.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Pull List Rec. We have 4 titles for you this week. Under I think this is the first week with our like official new Pull List
Yes.
Rec format. So let me explain that before we go into the books. Maybe I should have done it after,
Good
but let me
call.
explain it before we go into the books.
I think before works better.
Yeah. So numbered ratings are gone. There will be no more numbered ratings on this podcast. We
Thank
kind
goodness.
of decided collectively that it was a little bit too mean-spirited sometimes, and was hard to kind of actually represent a book with just a number. So we're just going to talk about
Also,
books. We're
I
still going to
think
give you our honest opinions, but
I also think
not
both of
like
our numbered
crushing them.
ratings, when you read the amount of books that we read, they become so inconsistent. Like that's one of the
Yeah,
things that we were having
and
trouble
also
with.
like arbitrary.
Exactly, yeah.
Like
When
like
we
there's things with it where we'll give it like I'll have like a 0.5 difference in the rating. I'll be like, but I liked one of those books I think so much better than the other book, and it's
or
just
you know,
hard
one
to
week I'll give something a 7.5, and then because it's like, the best one of that week, or
Yeah,
I guess the middest of
absolutely.
that week. But then the next week, something that I like less than that, I'll give like an 8 or an 8.5 because I like it better than the other stuff from that week. So like I
Absolutely.
had always admitted that my number system was flawed. I think yours was a little more consistent.
I tried because I had like numbers that I would stick to of like this is this, this is this, and I try to go around that. But that still kind of provides
Mhm.
issues sometimes because there's not enough space like between things, and so things will end up with the same ratings or whatever. It kind of skewed me towards a certain like section. Like I think between like 5 and 8 is where like 90% of my
Yeah.
grades went because that's just where I had, or maybe even between 6 and 8
I was
because
gonna
that's
say I
just
feel
where I
like we're
had like
definitely like
a lot
6.5
of
and
my
8.
standing points. Yeah,
Mine,
so like
I
I
think
think
mine
that's
skewed a little more even, honestly, because I was
yeah.
a little more dramatic
I
with
gave
my
so many
ratings,
7s and 7.5s. Like there were just so many
which
of
like
those.
makes sense when you think about where things would land. Because like to get
Yeah.
to publication, it's probably gonna be above a 5. To
Yes. We talked about that. I
get
think we gave out probably a grand total between the two of us. Like if we both graded it that would count as 2. Like we probably gave out a total of like 5 below 5 ratings or like 6 below
exactly,
5 ratings
yeah,
in the history of this podcast. Like
honestly,
not
if
a
that,
ton.
yeah.
Yeah, if that.
But that being said, we will of course still give
Yeah.
you our pull list rack. Jay, wanna
Yeah.
wanna run through what that's gonna look like?
Yeah, so essentially, instead of debating at the end when we put our numbers on whether or not something's going to get a pull list rec, we want to make the pull list rec mean a little bit something more than like 1 week there's going to be none, 1 week there's going to be, 4 or 5. We've decided that every week, as long as, books allow, we're not going to give something a pull list rec if we don't feel that it should get a pull list rec, but typically you will get 2 pull list recs on any given week. So if every book's outstanding, it's going to be the best 2 of that outstanding pack. So it's not an indictment on a book if it doesn't get one, but it should absolutely say something to you about the books that do get one, because those are
Yes.
going to be the top of the top books we absolutely love on any given week. But now that we kind of covered how that's going to work, let's talk about what 4 books we'll be talking about this week. We have returning, of course, Ain't No Grave, number 4, a book series that we have been very much enjoying up until this
Yes.
point. One of our favorites, especially Katie's, to talk about
I'm a
every month.
sucker.
So very excited to talk to you guys about that. Then we have The Boy Wonder, number 4. A series that we've been very up and down on, a lot of different opinions on there. So I'm very excited to see where we land on this week's version, this week's entry of that book. Um, Then we have another Cullen Bunn book because we can never be out of Cullen Bunn
Gotta be bunned
action on this
up.
podcast. We have Arkham Horror, The Terror at the End of Time, number 1. And then finally, ringing it up, we have another Marvel book, which I was going to say it's time for another Marvel book, but actually, because we've been doing Ultimate Spider Man, which doesn't end, this is
Yeah.
going to be the first time I think we're doing 2 Marvel books kind of at a time. So that's cool.
We're actually
It's
kind of technically doing 3. Because of our technical difficulties, we skipped over
yes,
Daredevil.
you are
But
correct.
we'll be doing a
Yeah.
double issue catch up on that when issue 2
That's
comes
right.
out.
So,
Just
just to
so
get it, Uncanny X-Men is the book. I don't remember if I actually said the title in that. So,
that's right, the Uncanny
Uncanny
X-Men
X-Men.
number 1.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's all the books that we are going to be talking about this week. But of course, it's not all the books we picked up this week. Katie, what else did you get?
Um Naturally, I think we're going to do a big roundup on Absolute Power at the very end of the event.
Yeah.
But we've got Absolute Power number 2. We've also got Red Before Black number 1. Gotham City Sirens number 1. The Batman and Scooby Doo Mysteries number 8. And Batman 151. And then I think we'll be talking about them next week. But we've also got The Pedestrian number 1 and Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter number 2. What about you,
Yes, we will
Jaybird?
be talking about those next week. Yep, I also,
What
of
did you
course,
got?
got The Pedestrian and Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter number 2. And actually, the reason that we're not covering those this week, and the reason you don't see me holding anything, is that I don't have physical books right now because I was on vacation last week and my store's closed today. So, no physical copies. I had to read everything digitally, so books that weren't as easy to get digitally had to be pushed to next week. But yeah, that's the reason for that. But I only have one other book that I have waiting for me at my store. and that's because I did not pick up Absolute Power, because I've stopped picking up the Absolute Power books because I figure I will either read them on DCUI or get a collected edition or something when
Very
we
fair.
decide to go over the whole thing, because it costs a fortune to pick up all those event books, man.
I'm
There are
only grabbing the
so
main line.
many of them.
I'm gonna
Okay.
read the rest of them on
Yeah, yeah.
DCUIU.
It's just so many. I can't do it to myself. But the one book that I have this week that we've not talked about is XO Manowar Invictus number 4. But
Sweet.
without further ado, do you want to talk about the order to
Yeah.
cover this week's books?
I would say I'd like to start with Ain't No Grave. Because I think we got some
I'm down
interesting
to start
things
with
going
Ain't No
on with
Grave.
that one.
Yeah.
And then do we want to I didn't think past that. What do you want to do next?
Let's throw out our other indie. And not like throw out, but do that next. Arkham Horror,
Arkham
The
Horror.
Terror at
Then
the
I
End
think
of Time.
X-Men, then Boy Wonder.
That was exactly what I was thinking.
Hell yeah.
But without further ado, let's go to Ain't No Grave.
Ain't No Grave, number 4. Ryder washes up on the shores of an abandoned mine and finds herself buried under her past, present, and future in this hauntingly loud, silent issue. The writer here is Scotty Young of I Hate Fairyland, Middle West, and The Me You Love in the Dark, and Rocket Raccoon. The artist is Jorge Corona of Middle West, The Me You Love in the Dark, Nightwing, and The Flash. The colorist is Jean-Francois Bellou, and the letterer is Nate Picos. Yeah, like it said in the description there, the issue is almost entirely silent. There is not dialogue until the very last page. Just to give that bit of context up front, Jaybird, big swing from the Ain't No
Big
Grave
swing.
creative swing team
Big
here.
swing. This is
Big
one of those,
risk.
I feel
How'd
like
you feel?
yeah. Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things that I say at the start of a lot of these like little intro monologues, which is I'm always so happy that I read these books before I read the descriptions.
Oh yeah,
Like I feel like going in this book not knowing that is much better than knowing
fully agree.
ahead of time. It was one of those things where I think was it this last issue of Morningstar that started like the first like 6 pages were entirely silent or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. So I opened this one and I remember immediately making the note like 3 pages in where it's like, just like Morningstar, this one starts off with no dialogue. That's cool. And then just kept going and kept going. I was like, oh no, this is just a dialogueless issue. Obviously, not fully the case, but pretty much the case. You get some music notes and then something. There is one piece of dialogue in this that I won't spoil, but man, that was great. That was a great way to use it to then lead into that, but I can't spoil the very ending of the issue. That'd be a bad play, so I'm not gonna do that. So yeah, it's a big swing. It's very, very, very difficult to do a full length comic. I think it's easier to do a short comic, but to do a full length comic book issue that is entirely silent, and then to place it in maybe not the middle. Is it a 5-issue series? But somewhere in the middle of a series that has been existing with dialogue.
Yeah.
Because now it's expected to carry the same amount of story. And we've talked about the fact that these issues aren't like sprinting through the story. You know, like this is a very taking the scenery, taking the art. Also, let's shout out how fantastic Jorge Corona's artwork is, especially on that goddamn title page. That first title page, gorgeous.
Goddamn.
Just gorgeous. And I mean, there's a scarecrow in here at one point that has like a bunch of crows on his arm. Gorgeous, looking so good. A lot of the scenes of her like going toward the music notes and stuff like that, and like
Page
bloody hands
3
playing the
sent
guitar.
me.
There is so much that is gorgeous in this book. I guess we're pretty much going to be not to act as if writing had no part in this from Scotty Young. Like obviously wrote out the way that the scenes go, but this is a book that the art is so much of, and I mean specifically this issue. We've talked about this as a series of hope, but specifically an issue that has no dialogue. The art has to do so much of the heavy lifting. And I'm going to give you the positive side of that and the negative side of that. Because I think there's a lot of positives. I think there is a negative. The positive is you can do some really great things on like an emotional and a tonal and a viable, just making people feel things. And I think that Jorge Corona really succeeds in that. There's like the parallel scene of like past and present that's done so ridiculously well. And I think that it's really, really strong at the opening. Like I think that they really hit their stride in that. I think that the middle is where you start to get to the issue a little bit, which is just conveying a story and progressing a story is a little bit difficult with no dialogue.
Hmm.
Um, or no caption. Like it doesn't have with
Yeah.
no words on the page. And I think that it stumbled, not like badly stumbles, but I think in the middle there's some stuff where I'm like a little bit of elaboration, a little bit of an idea of exactly what's going on here would be nice, would be helpful, would help me buy into the character's journey a little bit more.
Hmm.
But then I'm going to come full circle to it being a silent issue up until the end allows the end to hit really, really hard. And
Yes.
that worked so ridiculously well. So, took a big swing. I don't know if I'd call it a home run where I'm like, yes, dialogue list, full issue comics in this series is the way to go, but I think it worked. You
Yeah. It
know,
didn't strike out.
it did not strike out. It's I'll use a Todd McFarlane quote. Wasn't a home run, but it was a solid double.
There you
I've always
go.
loved that quote. I think this was a solid double in Ain't No Grave terms,
Yeah.
which is like Ain't No Grave has been phenomenal, and this was very good.
Yes.
Is where I think I land. I'm sorry, I
My
rambled for a long time.
No,
So
you're good. You're
go.
good. My ironic to ramble so long about an issue without any dialogue. My big thing is that it is a silent issue in that it does not have any characters speaking. The problem I had is that it clearly has moments where characters are supposed to be making sound. Like we
Yeah.
have Ryder screaming, like you said, there's like the mysterious person playing the guitar. And like
Yep.
I think if in the universe of the book it was a silent issue, I would think that it made more sense than as it stood here, where like
I agree.
I guess I'm not a terribly musical person, so when I read, I don't have like a score playing in my mind. When I see somebody playing an instrument or something, I'm like, oh, hmm?
Is that a thing? Are
I
there
don't
people who have like a
know,
score in their mind while they read? That sounds fucking cool.
right? That would be rad, and I assume there are, but I don't know. It doesn't happen for me. So like going through the first number of pages where it's like just her dead silent, her pouring herself a drink at the bar and drinking. It's like, oh, this is like it is silent in the book. Then we
Yeah.
get to her scream, like she clearly screams, and we don't see any manifestation of that. And I'm like, oh, that kind of messes with my immersion in the book, where it didn't feel like it
Right.
was helping immerse me in Ryder's like mental state or anything. It actually made me feel like I was farther away from her. And then the same thing happened when the guitar came in, and I'm like, okay, I it's breaking the silence that I feel like the book should have had. And like I think it's really cool. And because you rambled, we've from the past 3 issues we've heard me ramble about Jorge Corona's art. I could simply go on and on about it. It's all so gorgeous. I just wish that it felt more justified within the book.
Yeah. I'm gonna. You threw out the guitar thing, and that was weird to me a little bit because I think you have to have it one of two ways, which is either is it that the silence here is in universe, and then you can break it when it's broken in universe, or is it that you're doing this from a stylistic, like silent film perspective, in which case there shouldn't be caption bubbles on the screen even if they have music notes in them. Like is
Exactly. Yeah.
my thought process on that. Um, but yeah, I think the reason that I agree with you here, and I wouldn't always agree with you here, with the fact that it feels weird and distancing to be silent when it's not silent in universe,
Mhm.
is because this is an issue in an established series that hasn't always been silent,
Yes. Yeah.
or dialogueless. Like, I think if you're approaching a book and you're going into a new book and it's like, oh, this is like a silent film in a comic book. So even when they're talking, I'm not going to get dialogue. Like, I understand that. That's how this book works.
Hmm.
But that's not how Ain't No Grave works. So when
Yeah.
all of a sudden you get to an issue and it feels like you get to a chapter of this book and all of a sudden it's like, sorry, you don't get any of the sound or dialogue or anything in this chapter of said book. It's like, why don't I get
Yeah.
that in this chapter? So I
Exactly.
agree with you.
Yeah. But that being said, I still love Ain't No Grave so much. I'm so
Oh,
excited
absolutely.
for issue 5. That end issue ender, 2-page
That
splash,
issue was
phenomenal.
great.
No
Yep.
spoilers, but oh my god, I'm hype.
But do you want to tell the people the last thing we have to tell them about Ain't No Grave for the week?
Ain't No Grave has received one of our pull list recs for the week.
That's right.
Yes.
It is the first of our 2 official Script Heroes pull list recs. Like we said, might have been not, or the choice had its repercussions, but it's still a fantastic series and it's still a
Yes.
great issue with phenomenal artwork, and it's still super enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
Don't let any of the negatives we maybe pointed out there let you think anything different. It's an awesome comic book.
Yes. But we have more awesome comic books to talk about,
We
including
do.
one very near and dear to my heart as a board game geek. We're going to go talk about Arkham Horror, The Terror at the End of Time.
Let's do it. Arkham Horror, the terror at the end of time. Life was all just one big game to adventuring socialite Jenny Barnes, that was, until her sister was abducted by a dangerous cult. Although Jenny thwarted the cult's sacrificial endeavor and battled the eldritch monsters at their command, the High Priestess Abigail Olmsted fled and took Izzy with her. Private investigator Joe Diamond may not understand Jenny's story, but he understands loss. Joe and Jenny must work together and follow the clues to find Izzy, but more horrors await them in Arkham, Massachusetts, and time appears to be running out. The writer on the series is, as we mentioned earlier, Cullen Bunn of Sinestro, X-Men, and Ghost Lore, and the artist is Andrea Moody of 2000 AD, Charred Remains, and G.I. Joe. The colorist is Valerio Aloro, and the letterer is Hassan Atzman Alao, and my mouth is not working, so I'm going to throw it to Katie to talk about how she felt about Arkham Horror.
So my first kind of up is I am such a sucker for Arkham Horror. My sister and I played so much of the board game. The Elder Sign app has not left my phone for like the 10 years that it's been out. I don't even think it's on the App Store anymore. Like last time I loaded into it, it's like your software is no longer supported. Um, and specifically, Jenny Barnes and Joe Diamond. His name is Joe Diamond, but for some reason his name has become Joe Diamond to my sister and myself. They are my favorite characters to play, so the fact that Joe was in here was so thrilling. It's very silly to have something that you think is a very niche thing to yourselves thrust in front of you, published by Dark Horse. Where I'm like, oh right, Dark Horse also did like the Guild comics and all of this like niche nerd stuff that's not actually niche because no nerd stuff is niche anymore. It's it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I am coming at this as if it were an adaptation of a movie I loved, but without the burden of having to like capture the magic of the story because it's a board game series. And like, there's obviously role playing games and like established lore with the series. This was just very exciting to me as a little board game nerd to be like my 2 favorite board game characters going on an adventure together. But that being said, it wasn't without its issues. My big one was in the summary we just heard. We hear that Jenny fights a bunch of cultists at a fancy swanky party, which is super rad. I wish it took up more than maybe half a page because we really don't get to
Yeah.
see Jenny fighting these people. And Jenny's like a badass socialite with twin pistols. Like I would have loved to see more of her inciting incident or seen less of it and then seen it in flashback later. I feel like we got a weird amount of it in here that just kind of left me wanting either more or less because it just wasn't quite enough to satisfy. Um, I also want to give I didn't look at the banner first. Andrea Muti is also a super cool artist. He worked on Body Mask. He did. We all know how much I love Chicken Devil here on this podcast. He did the like fancy C2E2 variant of Chicken Devil that I have. He signed it for me. He's a super cool man. As I was going, I'm like, this art looks so familiar. It's so like haunting, spooky, and rad. And I'm like, oh right, Andrea Muti. And then I started going through, and I'm like, this lettering is so immersive. Wait a minute, is it? Hassan Otsmane, and it's just a real all-star team for me working on this book where I'm like, these are people who I
It
feel
wouldn't
like
be a Scriptures episode if you didn't praise Hassan Usman
it
aloud.
truly wouldn't. Look, I think he got an Eisner this year for his lettering, and he got one
He
last year,
did.
and probably the year before, because he's
Uh,
immensely talented.
I don't think he got one last year. Last year was Stan Sakai, I believe.
Well, oh, last year I think he got an Eisner last year for Panel by Panel, his magazine, that
Gotcha.
sadly doesn't run anymore. It's just on hiatus though. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. This was like a very we made this for you, Katie. Here you go type of comic. But it did have some story issues that I had a bit of a problem with. I really like where we got to at the end of it though, like the reveal about the dust,
Fully agree on
and
that.
then the really it's such a fine line when it comes to eldritch horror, what you show, what you like interpret these things as, and I think that Andrea Muti is someone who's really really up to the task. But yeah, as someone who I
Yes.
presume didn't spend tens of hours playing Arkham Horror all by herself when her sister went to college,
Yeah.
uh,
No
how'd you like it?
attachment to the characters or to the
To Jenny
world.
Bonds, let Joe Diamond Private Eye. He's watching
I
you.
think you managed to hit on kind of the criticisms of. Let me start by saying Andrea Muti's art does work so well for
Oh
this
yeah.
style of book. I think it is such a good match of style to tone of the series. Love that, and it really kicks up in that ending sequence, which is
Yeah.
my favorite and really the saving grace of this book for me. Like I think without that ending sequence, I would have went not for me. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the ending sequence piqued my interest, and I went, you know what? I'll do another issue. I'll see where this
Hell
goes
yeah.
because I want to see where this goes now. So, absolute 10 out of 10 on the ending sequence. Kind of from when they go down into that like dust area and all that. That's all phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of touched on it earlier, where like the kind of you called it the inciting incident. I'll call it the origin story for this like
Sure.
kind of story. Um, is like covered in like a 2 pages, and like it's kind of hand waves. It's like, yep, that happened. Let's get into the story, which I would be here for if the story wasn't just a ton of people like sitting around and talking. Like it just felt like it was a little bit of a slog in the middle there. Maybe because I didn't have that attachment to the characters that you had.
Which is fair.
Um, I really do like the way that Cullen Bunn writes dialogue, but it just
Oh yeah.
this issue didn't have kind of that spark in his dialogue that I feel like is usually there for me. So I just was kind of slogging through the middle there until I got to that ending sequence that really, really pulled in my interest. But I think
Mm-hmm.
either extending that opening or just kind of cutting to the chase a little bit more. Like I think that this like I guess investigation, as you could call it, could have been condensed or done in a way that was a little bit more intriguing to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I also thought that he had such a like for a book that spent so much time on the dialogue and on this like sequence. Like he goes, his name's Joe, right?
Joe Diamond
He
Private Eye. He's watching you.
yeah, he goes like I work alone, and then like literally 2 dialogue things later, I can tell you're not going to give up on this, so now we'll work together. And I was like, what?
I will
Like we
say
have all this dialogue space, and
he
you
gives
can't
up
extend
immediately.
that.
Uh,
Yeah, he
and
just gives
she
up
goes like, "Not this time.
immediately,
You're not working alone." He's like, "Okay, fine, whatever."
and I was like,
I love
so
my man.
maybe that was meant to show me his personality, but I just didn't think that fully came across
I
right.
feel I should also disclaim Arkham Horror, the board game, doesn't give a lot in terms of personality. It's mostly just me and my sister turning into a role playing game. So
Yeah,
don't trust me as
yeah.
an authority on these characters.
No, I was more talking like just from like
Fair
I
enough. Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
if
yeah.
that was intended to give personality, but I didn't read it that way. Like I didn't read it as like this guy's kind of wishy washy in his
No, I
convictions,
didn't
and
either.
like
I
I
very much read it as
I read it
a,
as
a
like this was
time
meant to be a
saver.
oh he would never work with her, but he's going to, and I was like I could forgive that in a book that didn't spend much time on these characters just talking and figuring things out, but this
Yeah.
issue spent so much time on it that I feel like we could have had the slow come around.
Hmm.
But again, the ending sequence really carries this
Absolutely.
to pique my interest. But yeah,
Super excited to
I'm
read
very
more.
middle of the road on this book. Yeah, I'm very much in like I think that this is going to be one of those series that depends a lot on where it goes from the first issue. We'll
Hmm.
kind of see how I look back at the first issue and decide where I land on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But we've got two more in the queue here. Are you ready to talk about
that we
the
did.
Uncanny X-Men?
I am.
Uncanny X-Men number 1. Professor X is gone. A core group of essential X-Men rise from the ashes to face a world without a home and without Professor X. All bonds among the mutant community seem to be slipping away, and Rogue reluctantly finds herself as the hero designated to bring them back together. But a fearless, malignant power is out there hunting mutants, and it has a terrible secret that may destroy what remains of the X-Men. The writer here is Gail Simone of Birds of Prey, Red Sonja, and Batgirl. The artist is David Marquis of Spider-Man, Civil War 2, and Justice League. The colorist is Matt Wilson, and the letterer is Clayton Cowles. Jay, are you much of an X-Men guy in general? I know that you're a Wolverine
No,
guy.
Weapon X-Men is the only, I think, X-Men book, which again is a Wolverine book that
Yeah,
I've read. I've read Wolverine books. Never really read straight up X-Men stuff. That being said, I was a fairly big fan of the Fox X-Men movies, which maybe is a
that's
good
fair.
indication that I don't know X-Men, because I
Here's the thing,
think
they're
a lot of X-Men
fun.
fans are not fans of them. I think they're very hit or miss. I think they have great movies and really, really bad movies, and they don't have a lot of mediocre movies,
I
which
don't
is
remember most of the
like
original
my
ones,
feeling.
but Days of Future Past and whatever the one, First Class, or is it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Those
those.
two are god tier. Yeah, no,
Oh
you
yeah,
nailed it.
yeah,
First Class and Days of Future Past are two of my favorite superhero movies ever.
they're
They're
so good.
so ridiculously good. Um, but yeah, so that's my X-Men experience, is the Fox X-Men verse. Like that's
Yes,
so
I thought I would establish that because you're a
take this out.
Daredevil guy, you're a
Yeah.
Wolverine guy. So in our
Yes. I'm
previous
not a big
Marvel
Marvel guy. It's
exploits,
really
yeah.
yeah, it's mainly Daredevil with a little bit of Wolverine every now and
Mhm.
then. So that's my Marvel uh
Yeah, and I've
viewpoint.
read a
Anyway,
few like kind
talk
of
about this issue.
side adventure X-Men ones. Like I've
Yeah.
read a bit of
Yeah.
the Gambit solo series, the Exterminator series. We are not
You love that Exterminator
X-Men
series. You mention it all the
experts.
time.
I love Exterminators. It's so good. I feel
Yeah.
like we're gonna read it at some point, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
I don't think
We
you'll
should.
like it though, so I probably won't have us
That's great.
read it.
That's great. It's gonna be
But
Hawkeye all over again, where you're like trying to make me love this book, and I'm like, I'm sorry.
we're
It
like,
was
this
it was
is
like well
beautiful and
made,
wonderful.
not
What do
to
you mean you
me.
don't understand? Um, but that being
Would you
said,
want
we
me
are
to?
not X
Yeah.
dash
Yes.
perks.
Yes.
So this is truly like it's a new number 1 of the Uncanny
Yeah.
X-Men. It feels like it should be
Yeah.
something for us. How did you feel?
Yeah. I'm gonna start by saying, they told us this was the jumping on point for X-Men. I call bullshit. I call
Absolutely.
full stop bullshit. There
Absolutely.
was so much I felt like I had to know here.
Yeah.
Like I was like, I don't know what's going on. Why is the X Mansion turning into a prison? Like what is that? What is all this Krakoa shit? I don't know. Why are they all split up? Where is everybody going? Why don't they want to do this? Why are they here? Why is this person there? Why is this going on? What the fuck is the dragon doing there? I
And
don't
what
know.
I know that we normally start with a ramble, but I'm going to cut you off there to like jump onto this point as well with something like the Ultimate Spider-Man number 1. Marvel and even the Daredevil books. Marvel does these little blurbs and they have a little blurb
Yeah,
at the front
yeah.
of X-Men as
So
well.
many of them do. Fucking
And
the last X-Men book I read, Wolverine Bloodhunt, had them at the start of
yeah,
every issue.
I think
Like,
every single Marvel book has it for every single issue. And for all of the other Marvel books we've read, I felt like it has gotten me up to speed and it's done what it's intended to do. This one did nothing.
nothing.
Nothing. Like it explained
And like this fully
what
an
the
editorial
X-Men
thing
are.
here. Just, I want to throw that out there. Like fully an editorial thing here of like, this is a new number 1, and I felt like it was very highly touted of like the old era of X-Men's over. We're starting the new era of X-Men. Like the Krakoa era is over. Here's all these new books, all these new stuff. You can jump on. And I just call such hard bullshit because
Yeah,
I'm lost. Like I'm immediately
fully
lost with
lost.
everything. But let me move into talking about this issue a
Yes.
little bit. I hated the opening. I hated everything with that because I had no idea what the hell was going
Yeah.
on. And I was like, I'm lost. I don't like books in general that start with the villain. It's one of my least favorite tropes,
Mm-hmm.
but it can be done if like you know the villain and you know what's going on. But I didn't. So I don't like that. I don't like that opening. Then we go into the dragon, and I had no idea what the hell was going on. And I was like, I don't know why we're dealing with a dragon. This is X-Men. I thought they dealt with like, mutant related shit. Why is it a dragon? But let me throw out kind of what's my huge overarching gripe, which became apparent in the dragon scene. I didn't find any of the three main characters likable
Mm-mm.
with the way they were written. And I like Wolverine,
And I
but I did
love
not find the
Gambit.
way they were written here. Like, I did not find them likable, which made this issue kind of tough in general. But let me give it my little bit of praise, because I do have a little bit of praise for this issue, which is actually a big piece of praise for this one, which, just let me, I have so many thoughts. This is a long issue with a ton of stuff going on,
Yeah.
but this felt like 4 separate stories almost. Like, you get like 10 pages, then 10, whatever the hell it is. It's just very segmented, which felt wild for a first issue.
Yeah.
Weird decision. But when you get to a segment, and I'm not going to spoil what happened, because I think if you read those, whatever, 10, 15, however many pages it is, if you read that, I think it's fantastic. I think the hospital, everything in the
Yes.
hospital, they go to visit
I
a
immediately
sick
knew what
child
you
who
were going
wants
for
to
when
be.
you said this one was
Yeah.
fantastic.
And I was like, that was so ridiculously well written, well illustrated. The characters were suddenly likable for only that, interaction and everything. But I love that. I thought that was so ridiculously good. I thought that it was maybe the best example I've read in a long time of like the saving cat from tree moment, as they call it, because I think it so
Mhm.
often comes across as being so cringy and done for no real reason. I thought this worked so ridiculously well. And then what I'll say about the ending of the issue, I didn't think it was anything phenomenal, but it did at least place me in the world a little bit, which was
Yeah.
nice since I was lost for so much of this. At least it was like, these people are here, this is why we're not all together. And I was like, that helped a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
my
yeah,
my
gonna throw it
big
to you.
gripe with it was the whole dragon part. It's like a big chunk of
Yeah,
the issue, and I don't
yeah.
know enough about Doctor Strange to really understand what the eye thing it has is. I don't know enough about the X-Men to understand why
I'm guessing it's
they're
the
in
Eye of
Mex.
Agamotto,
Yeah, they call
maybe?
it that, I think. But I don't know enough about it to understand, and I don't understand why they went there. Was it just an
Well, it's not
excuse
explained.
for Wolverine to team up with Rogue and Gambit? Because like, I don't know
I
why Rogue
think
and
so, but you
Gambit
could
are
have picked
they.
something that made more sense.
You could have picked something that made more sense. You could have picked something that was more like character driven, and it
Yeah.
just all that entire scene. I will say through the entire book, I did like Nightcrawler. He was basically only in the hospital part, so that makes
True.
sense.
True.
I do
Yes,
deeply enjoy
Nightcrawler was great.
Nightcrawler. And I do think Gambit made it out ahead of the other two, but I also just like Gambit's personality. So it worked a little more possibly for me than it did for you. I think that it was weird how they made him like useless in the fight until that very end moment. And then they're like, yeah, look at that. He
Ask you
like
something, because I never read Gambit. I don't know if this is a thing. I thought it was weird that they always referred to him as Cajun, that,
that's
like as if that was a
Wolverine
name.
calls him that as like his essentially
Rogue did
nickname.
it too.
I think she did it after Wolverine did as like a kind of nudge thing.
It just
Because
confused me. I was like,
my
does everybody call
my
him this? I
main
was
point
like,
of reference for Wolverine and Gambit interacting is the '90s cartoon, and he always calls him
mm,
Cajun in that. I think it's because he doesn't like him, so he doesn't
yeah.
like treat him nicely. Um, but yeah, that's just something Wolverine calls him. And I think Rogue was doing it as a cute little thing. Um, that being said, yeah, I feel like you kind of hit it with. I don't. I understand why they're all together, but I don't think it made sense that they all ended up together in the book. I also am just so lost in terms of like the greater X-Men thing going on. I feel like, especially with calling it the Uncanny X-Men, you really needed to make it a number one. Like it had to be somewhere where you could jump in and be like, okay, I'm gonna join the X-Men on their adventures now. And it just wasn't that, which is an absolute bummer because I am really excited about various characters in the X-Men. I want to get into them. And it was so nice to be like, oh, here's an approachable point to do so. And then it not being that. All that aside,
People
though,
have long told me
I
that X Men is like the most confusing continuity and like bullshit editorial to get into, and yeah, this seems to have just confirmed that.
proven that point. I will say I really, really, really like the art. I like the art style a whole lot. I think that despite my confusion about the dragon looked cool. I do think that the art was strongest in like the close-up emotional moments. Not that the action was like lacking or anything, but I think that it definitely is a very emotive art style that lends itself um, to those kind of quiet, emotion-driven moments for the characters. But yeah, I like the art a lot, and so I wanted to give some props over to David Marquez for that. But I think that's going to take us to a wrap on the X-Men, so we can go talk about the Boy Wonder #4.
How about the Boy Wonder? The Boy Wonder. Number 4. Can Damien escape the web of Ra's al Ghul? Damian Wayne may have been struggling to live up to his father's legacy, but the last thing he ever wanted was to return to the clutches of his grandfather, the Demon King. But when his worst nightmare comes true, can he rely on his mother to defend him, or has he lost her forever to the same horrific legacy he's trying to escape? The writer-artist on the series is Juniba of Monkey Meat, Delilah, and TMNT, and the colorist is Chris O'Halloran with letterer Adita Bittaker. Katie, Boy Wonder's been one of the most, I think, up and down series in terms of our reviews and kind of how we feel about it.
I mean, I would say that it's been one of the most up and then down. I don't think we've
That's
had
true.
another up.
That's true.
But
That's
I'm
true.
I'm pleased to
That's
say that
fair.
I think this one is an up. Uh, it breaks form a little bit from the previous ones because the kind of rhythm of the series has been going through and learning from the Robins. He did Dick, he did Jason, he did Damien, Tim. Hate Tim so much I just forget he exists. So it then obviously we're on #4 and we're not delving into the other Robins. So this is like him dealing with Talia specifically as the kind of mentor character in this one, for better or worse from him. And we get a lot of backstory on Talia. And one of the things that I think Juniba does so well is creating this sense of mythology around the characters, and they lean real hard into it on this one. Like in the previous
Yep.
issues, they've done kind of like the start and end with the king metaphor and the prince's metaphor, but this one is pretty divorced from that. Like they don't even refer to Bruce as like the king when he when he comes and they uh get together. So like it really kind of stands on its own from that, and I think that it actually stands on its own really well as a solo issue. And in fact, I think it
Fully
stands
agree.
better on its own than it does after the previous two issues. Like it really, it feels like it comes back around to the vibe that the original like maybe pitch for the book was going for, with this
Hmm,
like high
I agree.
mythologized uh bit. And it also doesn't solely focus on Damien. A lot of it is focused on Talia and her story in this, as opposed to like when we did Jason and it's like here's Jason telling you his tragic backstory, or like I guess they did a little bit of the narrator telling it, but it's that it was more of the same. And this Talia, we get I think a really cool insight into her, and like a really fun exploration of her in a way that Juniba's art does so well. And it really
Yep.
felt like a return to what I've been excited about with this series and felt was lacking the last couple. How'd you
Yeah,
feel?
I'm gonna agree with you pretty much across the board on that. I think the Talia like origin story essentially that you get at the beginning is some of the strongest pages that the series
Mm-hmm.
has done. I think it's fantastic. I love that. What is it? 3 or 4 pages? 4 pages. The 4 page like Talia origin, phenomenal. It's I think the time that the king metaphor has worked the best because they call her
Yeah,
like the princess and like that's the vibe. I think it's the time that it's worked the best because it fits the league motif a lot. And that's why I think this issue actually, one of the reasons this issue works so well is because I think the league just fits into this like
it
tone
does.
much better than the Bat Family does.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a very league focused issue, which I think is why it worked so well. And as you put it, works really well as a one shot, honestly. I think it's a really cool one shot if you kind of look at it like that. Um, yeah, I thought everything with the league here was really good. I actually really like just kind of the way that Juni draws Roz in this. Like I think
Mm-hmm. Oh
the
yeah.
kind of initial sequence with Roz like going to execute Damien essentially is so awesome and exciting, and I really liked it. I like this whole issue. I think it works really well. Actually, when I was reading it, I think I've done this on multiple occasions where like I think an issue isn't the last issue, I think an issue is the last issue. I thought this was the last issue. And as I was reading it, I was like, this is a good last issue, but it feels so disconnected from the first three that I don't think it serves as a conclusion. When I figured out it was not the final issue, I accepted it as an issue because you said it's the Talia issue. I'm going to disagree with you. I think it's the Damian issue in
It
going
very
through the
much is
four
the Damon
Robins.
issue as well.
I think you go Dick, you went Jason, you went Tim, and now you're going Damian. And you're doing the four Robins like that. And I think that it works really well in that respect. And it's by far, I think, maybe not by far, issue one was quite enjoyable as well, but I think it's my favorite issue of the series so far.
Mhm.
I think that this issue exemplifies, like you said, that initial pitch. Like this feels like what they were going for. And
Yeah.
when maybe Juniba kind of lost it a little bit with some of the other Bat family
Or
members in
had
the
to
last
like a
two
little bit
issues.
shoehorn it with the other Bat family members.
Yeah, exactly. This just melded so well, and it
Mhm.
worked so well.
And one more,
So yeah,
one
I
thing
really
that
enjoyed
I'd
this.
love to touch on with it without going too spoilery, because I think it was one of the coolest things in the episode. We get a really, really great emotional resolution for Damien about uh, something that's been following us through the series. And I think that was some of the best Damien writing in the book, or in like the entire series. Like I feel like with the Jason and the Tim issues, both of us were a little like, okay, I don't really get what Damien's supposed to be learning here. But with the Dick issue, and then with the Damien issue, it really feels like good, like, oh, this is Damien growing and like learning and becoming the person he's supposed to be. And I think that it did a really, really good job with that scene.
I'll agree. It has, I think, the best look at Damien's personality and kind of his. He has more of an arc, I think, in this issue than he did, across the series so far. And I also think it does something that is kind of the problem with creating a character like Damien in the main continuity. Like the way that they address his character here, and like what they do with this criminal that was alluded to earlier that he had killed, I think is just something they would never ever be willing to do in the main continuity.
Mhm.
And I think it just makes a lot of sense for the way that Damien came about as a character and having to deal with that and actually confront that without like
Yeah.
essentially wiping it in a way that makes it feel very clean.
Yeah.
Um, and I really, really like that. And that's something that I give Junibach tons of credit for actually, doing for just for like it's one thing like to do for Damien when he is a member of the like Damien is the character in this book and you're doing it. So that's,
Yes.
not going to spoil, but I applaud that. I think that's really cool.
But I think a lot of this book is a lot of good, and that's why
It
it
is
gets us.
our second official pull list rec of the
Yes.
week.
Absolutely phenomenal. But that's going to take us to the end of the pull list rec for this week. We've got Ain't No Grave and The Boy Wonder as your definitely ones to check out from our pull list. But we are going to mosey on over to the Creator Corner. All right, here we are in the Creator Corner where we sit back, relax, talk about books, talk about being creators, writers, that sort of stuff. This week, I would love to talk about the length of your comic. So, obviously, we read a bunch of different comics here. You and I have written a bunch of different things from, less than 10 panel Instagram carousel comics to, little one pagers for anthologies to uh, full length graphic novels and everything in between. I started really small and then realized that I could just keep going incrementally larger, but that would take forever.
Yeah, I was about to like
Um,
throw out like what is the longest comic you've written? Do you
uh,
know off the top of your head?
no, because most of them have been broken into like, write 6 issues of this for me.
I think the longest thing I've done is like 30, 60, 90, 100 pages
How
somewhere in
many?
ballpark. 300 pages somewhere in
That's
that
a lot
ballpark.
of pages.
Somewhere between like 200 and 300. I can't do the math this quickly in my head
I
off the
don't think
because like
any
we
of
stepped it in terms of how it was commissioned, but it was released as
yeah,
one like
that's
large
fair.
graphic novel. So.
I don't
Yeah.
think anything is going to compare to like full length novels in mine. So like the
Mm.
romance novels certainly takes the
We're,
cake with
we're
like
talking more comics because I
that's
assume that's
fair.
what we're talking about with this.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
certainly are. We certainly are.
Okay. All right.
But when I'm thinking about like how things are released, I'm like, I guess a novel is probably the longest one.
Well, yeah, no,
Um,
those are brutal, man. I've
yeah,
been working on one for years at this point. I cannot right now. I don't know how you fucking did it. Like that is not cool. Novels
it was
suck.
very thrilling. Um, but we're talking about comic books here. So we've got a few different examples of like ways to deliver your story. There's just kind of looking at the regular publishing thing. Let's start with like anthology story, one shot, mini series, including maxi series, and then an ongoing.
Yeah,
So you as reader and then also you as writer, do you like different things when looking at the two of
yeah,
those? Obviously neither of
absolutely.
us have had,
Well,
or I guess Cutting Carly would kind of be an ongoing, right? Would you
yeah. I mean,
categorize? Yeah,
we're at 4 years. I just wrote 58, I think, chapter
yeah, I think that
58.
certainly
So
counts as an ongoing. And
yeah,
Janitor Hero ended up being tragically canceled, but it was like
yes,
set up to be ongoing.
it was set up to be an ongoing, and then we numbers kept being thrown out for final issues, and then it just got canceled. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to say because I think as a reader and a writer, I like the same thing from like a enjoyment perspective. But
Hmm.
then there's the reality of the publishing world.
Right.
And funny enough, I'm hearing the voice of somebody who we're going to talk about his book that we're going to be talking about next week. But uh, yeah, I don't know why I was gonna couch saying his name. Joe Corolla, my friend, has told me like no publisher wants a one shot right now, like a creator on one shot. It is one of the hardest things to do right now. Publishers do not want creator on one shots, and then I think it's very well known that publishers do not want creator on ongoings from
Hmm.
small names. So those are like the two things right off the bat of like two of the things I love most as a reader and as a writer, like to make publishers don't want them. Like
Yeah.
I am a big like I love a good one shot, and otherwise I love an ongoing. I'm not a huge miniseries guy. I've trashed miniseries a lot of times on this podcast.
Which is where we
Um,
diff.
but that's what the market really wants. Like that's what publishers really want. And I also talked about this for a long time where for the longest time it was a 6 issue mini. Like the 6 issue mini was a thing for like I want to say that was like the predominant mini for like a decade. Like
Hmm.
that was the mini length. And it was once minis became a big thing, like it was maybe the first like 4 or 5 years of minis being like the main thing. It was that 6 issue mini. And then it became okay, it's a 5 or 6 issue mini. And then we just I think in the last couple of years really landed on the no, it's a 4 issue mini
Yeah.
now. It's a 4 issue mini now. And now we're
Especially from
starting
like
to
indie
see
publishers.
yeah, we're starting to see like, oh no, it's a 3 issue mini now. Like that's starting to pop up. And we even saw we talked about it with Coins of Judas, like we're seeing 2 issue minis now.
Yeah.
Like not a ton. I think we're still in the fours predominant now, and
Mhm.
three is starting to pop up. But it just shows you that it is like still
Yeah, I
segmenting. So
think it
talking
was
from a publishing
DB
perspective,
Andrew
that's what
who was
yeah.
giving us that as well, talking
Yeah,
about how the
absolutely.
length of the minis, and it might have, I think John Layman hit on that too with like the amount that you're able to pitch at any given time. Um,
Yeah, he was talking about his was on a larger scale, but he's talking about from bigger creators. Like he was,
yeah,
I think, talking like that in his mind originally. Like I think it was a 60 issue series was like that's your
yeah,
your landmark for like a long going series. You hit 60, and then it became 30, and now he thinks it's 15, and he's still struggling to hit that 15 now.
yeah.
So that's like, check out that episode by the way, because he talks about it way better than I do.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah. And
yeah,
the rest of In Hell We Fight, that should be a bonus episode, I think, right?
yeah.
Where's that?
That is a
A
Strange
Strange
Saturday Super
Saturday,
Show
yeah,
where we interviewed John Lennon. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's rough to get an ongoing even as like an established creator. Like the fact that Local
They got
Man
to be big.
exists as an ongoing is insane. And
Well,
it
there's a few names that I think can like at any time command an ongoing, and I think it's like Tom Waltz, Todd McFarlane, basically any Image founder because they can just choose to do it.
yeah.
And then like you're talking about like the Massiverse people, if they want to start one, they can start one, and then
Even
there's
so,
probably a
it
few other
Kyle
names.
Higgins has Radiant Black. No, is Rogue Sun and
Yeah,
The other one, are they
Rogue Sun's
ongoings?
an ongoing.
Okay,
Just Rogue
because
Sun. I think it's
a
just Rogue
lot of
Sun,
their
and
yeah,
it's
the
just
rest of
Rogue
their
Sun and
offshoots
Radiant Black.
are all miniseries. Um,
Yep, yep.
yeah,
But my point was, I don't think Image is going to say no to them if they say they want to start an ongoing. Like they might choose not to because they also know at this point that the market is
mhm,
rough on ongoings. But I think on a creator level, I think they could get one if they wanted one. And I think there's other
probably.
people, like I think the Scott Snyders of the world and like the Mark Wades of the world. Like I think there's other people who can get them when they
Yeah, I
want,
mean, I don't know if
but they
World's
also might
Finest
just
is
not
an
want
ongoing,
because
but
yeah, but my point is more so well, and that's like I'm talking like if they want a creator one, like
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure Mark
yeah,
Waid could jump to Image and be like, I want it ongoing. But the point is, I think it also says something that these creators aren't choosing to do that even when they can because they know as well as the publishers do that it's a rough thing to do right now. But again, that's talking from a publishing perspective, which is an important perspective to have. But
yeah.
as a writer, and also check out our interview with because I'm about to quote Lewis Southard, like I want to write ongoings. Lewis Southard talks about this. He said that he hates writing minis. He has written so many creator-owned minis. It's what he does. But because the market's not always going to match up to what you want to do, I would love to write ongoings. I love writing ongoings. Janitor Hero, when I was doing that, because I wrote only 5 chapters came out. I wrote 12 chapters of that, so I was deep into writing it like it was an ongoing. Cunning Carly, like all these things. Writing ongoings is fun. It's enjoyable because you don't have to plan out every month. You can like I make long-term plans for ongoings, but it's nice to adjust to just be able to do this thing this week and then tie it in and do little hints to things. Writing miniseries is its own thing and it is a lot of fun, but there's something a little bit less, I think, creatively endearing about like having to make sure that everything is part of this one unit compared to being able to do something that it exists on both like smaller levels as well as like a piece of this larger whole. So I love writing ongoings.
I'm such a sucker for a completed whole though. Like I am a I know that I grouped them together. I am such a maxi series person. Like I feel like in my dream universe, the series that I would be writing every single like cycle of creativity would be like an 18 issue maxi series where it's like 3 arcs, 6 issues each, beautiful, perfect. Uh
No publisher's given 18 issue
no.
series either, though, unfortunately.
No, of course not. That's just it. Like the dream universe. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
would be writing an ongoing, and I would be writing just a bunch of disconnected, different universe. Three
Yeah.
arc maxi series. Because I love
I
being
think
able
like
to
in an
plan
ideal
out.
world, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you continue. You
Oh yeah,
continue.
being
I'll
able to
take it's
like
not.
plan out what's happening is such a boon for me. An ongoing would feel far too daunting. I think I would still take an ongoing, and I'm sure that this is like how most people write their ongoings. Like one arc at a time. I'm like, okay, I know what I'm planning for this arc, and like maybe I think of it a little bit like the closest thing I have done to writing an ongoing would be like writing a D&D campaign, where it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing for this arc, and then like the effects of this arc, depending on where the story goes, can impact the next one. But that's not a problem until later. Uh, I would be so stressed out, being like, I have an indefinite amount of issues to fill. How do I know how to
Yeah,
pace myself? So I
that's
think I
super
would
fair.
just die of I don't know dehydration writing an ongoing.
No, that's super fair. I yeah, no, that's super fair. And I think that speaking to a big point, if we're gonna talk to people about like I'm assuming we're talking about like we're talking about like deciding a length if you come up with an
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Like what do you want to do in terms of like you decide you want to make a comic? Firstly, you're gonna hear this from everyone. You're gonna hear this from people way bigger than me, and you're not gonna listen to them. So why would you listen to me? But I'm gonna tell you as somebody who didn't listen that they are right. Start with anthologies, start with short comics. Do not do not get into comics and go, I'm gonna write this 12 issue, this 24 issue, this 30 issue epic because that's how I start. No, it's not. Don't do it. Um, but or this ongoing, whatever it is. But I think that you spoke to kind of what's going to hit on deciding on what you want to do. Is this something that you have a tight story for, that you have a like whole for? It's like, okay, this is the story. It starts here, it ends here. Boom. It's like, okay, great. Maybe it's a mini, maybe it's a one shot, maybe it's a maxi, whatever. But if where you land on it is I have a character and I have the idea of what I want them to do, that kind of endears itself to an ongoing. Now, in the current landscape, you might have to treat it as a miniseries that is essentially the
Yeah.
first arc of that ongoing. That is most comic books nowadays. They are a miniseries that is obviously not a true miniseries because they want more if they can get more.
Hmm.
Um, that's kind of how the market works right now. But I think that that is kind of how you land on your length, is like, how do you want to approach it? How does the story fit? Is it this contained thing, or is it a piece of a larger puzzle? Is it something that is a large puzzle and you have to take a piece to then go to a publisher or release online, or however the hell you want to do it? That's the other thing. Web comics are a great way to do ongoings still.
Yeah.
Like, that's how so many people nowadays do their ongoings. But yeah, I don't know. Your thoughts, Katie?
Yeah, I think that, like you said, having, it's very rough to just get out there with, this is my character and let's explore their universe in an ongoing format. It's because it's a daunting task even for you as the writer slash artist. Like, that's if you don't know where you're going, it's hard to put your best foot forward with where you are. Um, and that doesn't say that, again, most webtoons, like you said, are going to be, like, I would consider them ongoings. Like, they're not in a
Yeah,
traditional
absolutely.
published format, but they are ongoing. Um, and I mean, you look at something like, I feel like the best example of this that we have is going to be The Hunger in the Dusk, where it was marketed as a miniseries, and it still is a miniseries. It's like, okay, we did our first one, and now we have book two, which is, a second miniseries. And perhaps their
Okay, let me say
hope.
this. Book one was not a miniseries. It was fantastic. It is in no way, shape, or form. I mean, it was released as a miniseries. That is not a story. That's not even like the first. Like, that is not even like an arc to where you can be like, if the book was canceled, this could have been the. It couldn't.
Yeah.
Like, that was not the ending to any story.
No, and that's kind of what I'm saying, is that the best example of a being released as miniseries
Oh
to
yeah.
essentially get an ongoing or a maxi series, whatever the future holds for Hunger in the Dusk. Uh, it very much was like, here's book one, and we know it's good. We know you're gonna want more, so give us book two. And I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of book two, it's like, oh, and you want more, right? So give us book three. Uh,
Yeah.
so it's an interesting kind of case study to look at that. And then we
Yeah.
look at something like In Hell We Fight. We talked with John Layman about like what the plans are going ahead for it. And he's like, yeah, I would love to do like a second volume of it, essentially releasing that as another miniseries, which
Yeah.
there's that weird kind of thing of, if it's the second volume of a thing, is it still like a miniseries? Like, it could be a maxi series, whatever. But at what point is it like, where is the line? What changes?
There's your interesting look at like different things, because I'm gonna say I think In Hell We Fight's actually the best, or a much better example of a mini to pitch an ongoing, because I don't
Mhm.
think that's what The Hunger and Dusk was, because I think they already had book two when book two one was announced and released. Like, it's literally in the last issue of, oh, the book two's here and it's coming, and I'm pretty sure it had been announced before
I believe you. I don't
before
remember.
that. and and I'm sure they had probably had the green light before then, because I don't think most publishers are going to release a book that has that open of a miniseries ending without very much expecting to do more. In Hell We Fight does something a little bit different, where it is very much the first part of a larger whole, but they put in a little ending for you.
Yeah.
They put in something to be like, here you go, this is the ending of a miniseries. It's just a very different look, because one was from talent that probably could go out there and be like, we're definitely getting more. Like, if we want more, you're going to do more. Like, we're going to do more.
Hmm.
This is happening. And the other came from a team that is much more in a position of like, we need to sell enough and we need to convince people to let us get more. And that's kind of the difference. They both clearly went in with like, we want more, because John Layman's talked about, he planned this out to be 15 issues. So I just think it's a different kind of structuring there of like how you approach it, where in certain circumstances, like, I think, In Hell We Fight is still a longer bit, and the publisher's just releasing it in smaller chunks to make it more marketable,
Hmm.
compared to one where the creators have to release it like that, intentionally, to
Yeah.
then maybe get more. So I think that it's a little bit of a different kind of way of approaching it, but it speaks very truly to length. Like I think in both these circumstances, the publishers have decided that they are miniseries. I think in one
Right.
of these circumstances, the writer John Layman is writing for miniseries. He is still writing under the guise of it being miniseries. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a
G. Willow Wilson.
G. Willow Wilson. Thank you. I did not have the G in my head there. I did not know what letter it was. Um, G. Willow Wilson is writing for the ongoing and just letting the
Mm-hmm.
publisher or the maxi or whatever it is, and just letting the
Yeah.
publisher like chunk it. I don't think G. Willow Wilson is like making any sacrifices to make it work better as a miniseries
I think
compared
that
to
probably
I think
tracks.
John Wilson is.
And I wonder how much of that has to do with, because she's the writer who's doing the Poison Ivy one for DC, and I think they extended her Poison Ivy series twice. They did at least once. I think it might have been twice. Where it's like, oh, she knows she's got it. Like DC's extending her series because everyone loved it. So
Yeah,
like she's got that clout, and not that John Layman's written for Batman. He's written for everyone. He's written for Gambit.
he just got put on Titans. Like
Exactly,
this
yeah.
man's about to do Titans.
He's
Yeah,
he's got plenty of clout. But
and Chew. Like how are we
exactly,
not talking about
yeah.
Chew? Like that went
He
forever.
even said it was like one of the last like massive series that was like a creator-owned
Yeah,
one to go out. Of course, not counting Robert Kirkman stuff, but he's in charge of his own stuff. So
yeah. He lives in his own world. I don't think any of us
exactly,
play by Robert. I always say Robert Kirkman and Todd McFarlane. Like none of us play by Robert Kirkman or Todd McFarlane rules in comic
no,
books. Like those
no,
fuckers can do whatever they want.
truly whatever they want. But yeah, so I think that it's all well and good to like write for an ongoing, especially in a webcomic format where maybe as a creator you don't have as much burden as it would be to like put out a monthly book, or even like I think when we were talking to, I want to say it was Christian Herrera, and it's like, yeah, I am just putting out my Kickstarter books to make enough money to fund my next Kickstarter book. Where it's like that's also a
Yep.
valid way to do it, but there's
Oh
much
yeah,
less
absolutely.
pressure on you if you're doing like a web series where it's like maybe not full physical comic books that you have to be putting out with any sort of consistency. Instead,
Then
as
there's something to talk
your
about
rough,
of like the Kickstarter ongoing because those are
yeah,
like not necessarily like traditional ongoings because they're not coming out monthly. There's not like that time pressure. There's not like that you need it to be able to sell like month to month, and you can keep selling the earlier issues when you are. But like Kickstarter ongoings, like look at Nick Mueller with Winnie the Pooh
yeah, I
Demon.
was
Like
gonna
that's
say,
essentially an ongoing, and
hmm,
fucking Raven Demon Hunter is absolutely an ongoing. That's
yeah,
at like 15 volumes or whatever. Like there are a lot of people doing that kind of stuff on Kickstarter where it's just like, well, we'll just do the next thing, and then once that sells, we'll do the next thing. So yeah, it's all just in kind of you need to figure out the mix of how it looks creatively and then how you get to that goal on a publishing and like a realism sense. But let me quickly, as we wind down here, throw you one last question because I think I maybe answered it or maybe I didn't. I rambled for a while, but I'm going to kind of get your perspective of how you land on when you come up with a story. Is it like immediately you know how long you want that story to be, or is there kind of a way that you land on length?
I think it's helpful for me to immediately be able to take things off the table. So in my mind, there's essentially like the four categories of story, where there's the short story, the anthology, the miniseries, the ongoing, and I'm immediately often able to be like, okay, this is not going to be an ongoing. That's like always off the table for me because again, I don't want to do that. But then there's also usually going to be another one that I can knock out because typically there's not going to be a story that I feel that I can tell as any of these three. I'll typically have an idea of, okay, this is short enough to be an anthology, or I could make it into a fuller story that could be a mini series, or it's like a one shot that I could also expand into a mini series, or it doesn't have the length for that, so I have to decide on a like short story or a thing. So for me, it's really a process of elimination thing where I look at the story that I have and I know what it's not, and then when I get into the like very high level outlining of figuring out like this is like the whiteboard outlining, not even the Google Doc yet, where I'm like, okay, this is what I want to happen in the story. And then looking at that and be like, okay, that's not necessary, that's not necessary, that's not necessary. And then I think a good rule of thumb is making things as short as possible is probably going to be the best thing for presuming you are also a little up and coming creator, where it's like, okay, how can I do this with the least amount of burden on myself while
Yeah,
not sacrificing story? So I think
absolutely.
shorter is generally going to be the better route, at least when I'm conceptualizing things.
I think that was very well said. Hopefully
Thank
helpful
you.
to somebody
Yeah.
out there on landing on what length their next project should be. But
Yes.
let's talk about our next project, next week's episode of the Script Heroes
You don't know what I'm
podcast.
doing
Katie,
between then and now.
what are we pulling on next week's episode?
Next week, we'll be pulling Morning Star number 5, which I believe is the end of Morning Star, if I remember right.
It is.
We've also got Heart Piercer number 4, which I believe is an ongoing, so it's not the end.
It's the they're ending this arc either 4 or 5. I can't remember, and then I don't know that there might be a gap before the next arc. I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Darn, that throws it off because we had miniseries ongoing, and then Kardak the Mystic, which is a one shot.
Yes.
That is a one shot coming from Archie Comics from friend of the pod host,
Joe Corolla.
Joe Corolla. Then we're also going to be catching up with Jay's physical copies, I don't know where I put mine, of Winnie the Pooh Demon Hunter number 2 and The Pedestrian number 1. But we've been busy before that as well.
We have. Last Saturday was the Strange Saturday Super Show where we talked about Happy by Grant Morrison and Derek Robertson. That was actually, I think, one of the most interesting conversations we've ever had on a bonus episode, as we took very different stances on this book.
It's probably the most split we've ever been on a book.
Yeah, it was a very lively debate. I think that we really got into talking about the meat of this book and kind of its merits and its disadvantages and everything. And I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking for a spirited debate on Happy's merits as a comic book, you should check that out. It's
a
really
spirited
cool.
debate about a bright blue.
It's only 4 issues, so read it and then watch.
There you go. But that's gonna wrap it for us on this episode here. Oh, he doesn't want to do his line?
No. I was going into it.
He's really ramping up into it.
We will see you all next week. Comic Geeks.